Hello and welcome to another free History Online tutorial session. Today we're going to look at loads and loads of exam skills, looking at the 1918 to 1939 topic. And we're going to concentrate on the final years. So join us for loads of grade 9 skills. Right, let's get to it. In today's session, we're going to have a little revision quiz in a minute. We're going to be testing your knowledge on the final years of the 1930s, the Hitler causing war scenarios, and then we're going to look at loads of exam skills, look at source skills, and we're going to look at explanation skills. So it's quite a long tutorial today, but hopefully it will develop lots of skills ready for the exam. So over to the quiz. Here we are then in the quiz area, and here are 12 questions just of key facts that you should know. Hopefully you've been revising well and you know them. If you like, you can just pause the screen and give it a go, and you could write them down, or you could just have a go at them in your head. But let's see how well you revise, see how much you know. Give it a go. Okay, let's have a look at your answers and we'll talk about these a little bit. All right. So when did Hitler perform the Anschluss? So March 1938, Hitler took control of Austria, breaking the Treaty of Versailles to perform the Anschluss. Who was the leader of Austria? Well, Schuschnigg was the man who had to sit down and make the deals with Hitler. He was pushed aside by Hitler when he invaded, and that meeting 11th of March. And then question 3, who was leader of the Austrian Nazis? Well, says Inkart. He was the guy who was given the leadership of Austria after Schuschnigg met with Hitler. And he was then the one who requested that Hitler's German forces invade to save Austria from disaster. When did Hitler force Schuschnigg to resign? So March 1938, we've been talking about it being March the 11th. What percentage of Austrians agreed to the Anschluss in April 1938? So obviously they had a referendum then. Initially in the deal Schuschnigg and Hitler had, there was going to be a referendum. Hitler said he didn't want that referendum. He didn't think it was going to be fair. And he then asked for Schuschnigg to make Seyss-Inquart the leader. And then when after Hitler had invaded, taken control, they had the referendum. And what a surprise, 99% agreed. And then on to British appeasement of the Munich crisis. So who was the leader of Britain? Chamberlain. Who was leader of Czech leader? Was Benz. When was the Munich conference? The third appeasement meeting was called the Munich conference. That was September 1938, and there were 2 meetings before that. And then after the third meeting, the Munich conference, Hitler was allowed to take the Sudetenland, which he did in October 1938. And I said there were 3 meetings about the Czech problem. Initially, the first meeting, Chamberlain met with Hitler and they agreed to a referendum, a plebiscite, to see if the Sudeten Germans wanted to join Germany. Then Hitler and Chamberlain met again, and Hitler said he didn't want this and he wanted just all of Sudetenland. Then Britain and Germany and other countries started to mobilize, ready for war. And then the Munich conference, brokered by Mussolini, was the one that gave Sudetenland Germany and stopped the chance of war. And obviously, Chamberlain came back to England saying that he'd got peace in our time, waving his piece of paper. So the final agreement, as I said, was the Munich Agreement, number 11, and which agreement between Russia and Germany divided up Poland. So in 1939, you've got the Nazi-Soviet Pact, which finally causes war. So by this time, obviously, Hitler's taken the rest of Czechoslovakia in March 1939, invaded a country that's non-German, and then Britain and France realised that Hitler is a bit of a liar and a fraud. And when he says he wants Poland, they say an ultimatum. If you invade Poland, it'll be war. Hitler then realised he's got to stop a 2-front war, so he makes a deal to split Poland with Russia, which is the Nazi-Soviet Pact, and then both Russia and Germany invade Poland and carve up Poland. But this means France and Britain have got to declare war, and they do so in September 1939, and that is the end of your course when we get to that bit. So I hope you've been successful with the quiz and you know your facts. Our first skill we're going to look at then is this writing account skill, which so many people find a bit tricky, but we're going to work towards a grade 9, a top level answer on this. So how do you answer this correctly? Well, there's a number of skills to think about. So firstly, think about don't write an account. Okay, ignore that phrase in there. It tells you you're going to write a story, but I don't want you to write a story. I want you to explain your answers. So you've got to come up with an argument, not a story, an argument. This is history. We write arguments in history. Secondly, we are going to be writing those 2 normal Peel paragraphs explaining, in this case, explaining how the Nazis achieved the Anschluss. So we need a topic, a point sentence to focus on. So when we're given that clear point, we are not writing a story then. We are able to write an argument, and we've got to stick to that point. Okay, write in the style of an event for your evidence and then consequence for your explanations. So you'll make your point, you'll then give the evidence, the Nazis did this, and then you then say, explaining this led to the Anschluss because. So in that sense, it's writing a narrative because you're looking at events, but it's event then consequences to explain your answer. So how does this work then? So you can pause it and give this a go if you like. I'm going to go through an example paragraph, but you're welcome to sort of play along with what you do, either in your head or by using a piece of paper and a pen, believe it or not. Firstly, make a point. Yeah, point of argument. So firstly, the Nazis achieved the Anschluss due to, and give a reason. Due to, I don't know, wanting to break the Treaty of Versailles, wanting to unite all Germans, something like that. Make an argument. All right. So, due to the Dollfuss affair, giving the Nazis extra powers in Austria. Oh, right, I've gone far back in time here, haven't I? So the Dollfuss affair, the Nazi attempt in 1934 to seize power in Austria, the first attempt at the Anschluss. And when the Nazis actually killed Dollfuss, the leader of Austria, but obviously the Italians then stepped in and said, no, you're not taking control of Austria here. So the Dollfuss affair. So firstly, the Nazis achieved the Anschluss due to the Dollfuss affair, giving the Nazis extra powers in Austria. Then we need some evidence. So a little bit of a detail about the story. Have a think. What can you remember? Well, I've just told you a few details. Maybe that will help you. Have a little think. Maybe pause and give it a go. So, for example, in 1934, the Austrian Nazis murdered the Austrian leader Dollfuss and tried to lead a Nazi power. This was only stopped by Mussolini intervening. Right. This helped the Nazis to achieve Anschluss because. So there must be some consequences of this Dollfuss murder that have led to the Anschluss. So have a think. Can you think of it? Give it a go. Because when a new leader, Schuschnigg, came to power, he had to make a deal to keep the powerful Nazis under control. In this, he gave them some key positions as government. This meant the Nazis remained a powerful group in Austria. So there was a deal made with the Nazis and Schuschnigg that kept the Nazis in a prominent position of power, enabled to then perform the Anschluss later on. Okay, that should be hopefully relatively simple. That's quite a complicated idea to go back to the Dollfuss affair. Another idea, of course, could be that they wanted to take an early argument about they wanted to break the Treaty of Versailles and unite all German people. But the second paragraph definitely needs to be about the later events. So secondly, the Nazis achieved the Anschluss because we need to pick some later events because the Austrian Nazis began to, lead further protests in Austria, perhaps. Or again, you can come back to this idea of Hitler really wants to unite all German people. And then give some evidence, give an example of the Schuschnigg government starting to struggle. This led to Anschluss because Hitler meets with Schuschnigg, talk about the deal, talk about the invasion, try and get a sense of explaining the story of events. Give this a go, right? You can pause it and give it a go, and then you can mark it because I have an example paragraph on the next slide. So have a pause, give it a go, maybe have a think about it or write it. It's good to practice your writing ready for your exams. Good to practice to write a paragraph in 5 minutes if you can. Where you go. Okay, here is the example paragraph then. So secondly, the Nazis achieved Anschluss when Schuschnigg panicked and made a deal with Hitler that led to the seizure of power. That would be a nice potential starting sentence. You might have a different one. As long as you've got a because, you've got an argument, that's the main thing. So for example, in January 1938, Austrian police raid, the Austrian Nazi party find detailed plans to overthrow the government. This led to Anschluss as Schuschnigg panics and gives away his power, and he meets Hitler in Germany and makes a deal. Hitler has 3 generals in the meeting to be threatening. In the deal, Schuschnigg allows the Nazi Seyss-Inquart to be made Minister of the Interior, and the Nazis also have the Economic Minister and Foreign Minister. Schuschnigg gains an agreement for a national referendum on the Anschluss. However, by 11th of March, he has lost all power, and the Nazis protest leads to Hitler demanding Seyss Inquart takes power, and then 12th of March, Hitler takes over Austria. Okay, so wider ideas. Well, furthermore, the Anschluss has achieved as Italy now are allies with Germany, and obviously they don't protest about it like they did in the Adolphus affair. They are quite happy to accept Germany expanding into Austria. Right, now on some top source skills. This is a pretty good question for looking at the appeasement. We've got this famous source of Stalin in the doorway here. We're going to look at what that means in a minute and have a chance to do that. But remember, this is the 12 marker, the source question with two sources. It's quite a tricky question, 12 marks. A lot of your exam marks can take a bit of time as well. So we're going to look at this question: how useful are sources B and C to the historian studying the success of appeasement? So the success of appeasement doesn't mean just successes. It's a general statement about success and failure. So the ways it was success and a failure to be thought about. So let's have a look at the source and what it means then. You can pause this if you like and have a little look and come up with some ideas. What do you think are the main messages here from the source content and from the provenance about how useful this source is about the success of appeasement? Have a pause and for 30 seconds or so and have a think about some ideas. Okay, so here's what I've thought about. Firstly, the leaders have gathered together and a deal has been made. You've got Czechoslovakia on the wall, drawn in the background as a map, and Hitler looks pretty sort of, defiant. He's got this deal, and you've got Benz and you've got Mussolini there and Chamberlain. They're all happy they've got their deal. Stalin was not invited to the meeting, so clearly he is unhappy about this. He's in the doorway going, "What? No chair for me?" So clearly the cartoonist is trying to say there's consequences of Stalin not being invited to the meeting. And the provenance is from the third meeting. So the date is the 30th of September, it's the end of September, and obviously we know in October is when Hitler invades Sudetenland. So this has got to be the last meeting, and obviously our knowledge supports that because we've got Mussolini sat there in a meeting as well. It is a low cartoon, and he's very famous for being a very skeptical person about Hitler and about generally the course of international relations at this time. We know he's done lots of famous cartoons, and it's of course a British perspective, even though Low is not from Britain. So we can use all of these to form our argument. So how do we form our argument then? So for our grade 9 top skills on this question, we've got to make sure we focus on that how useful statement. We've got to make sure we're thinking about it's partly useful, it's very useful. We've got to give our judgment. Each source needs discussion its own paragraph. Each source needs to have its provenance discussed, its content discussed with knowledge. If you want top marks, you've got to do provenance, content, and judgment. If you're happy with maybe the next band below, you can just focus on content of the source, knowledge, and judgment. But if you want that top band, you need to have provenance in there as well. Explain everything with knowledge. You can explain the provenance with knowledge, the date, easy to explain that with knowledge. You can explain the content with knowledge, put knowledge throughout to back up your ideas. And throughout and at the end, give a clear judgment. This is partly useful. This is very useful. This is more useful than the other source. You can give judgments throughout. So how are we going to do this then? So I'll put a little writing frame on here. Have a little think. You can give this a go, and I'll show you an example answer. So have a think about Stalin in the doorway for your content. What does that say about things? If you're not sure of your knowledge, then go back to my revision video on this time, or look at my quiz notes on this time and revise it, and get your knowledge of the appeasement section really well organized. You check you know your knowledge. So it's the Russian reaction to appeasement here that we're really interested in, isn't it? And how that could be a failure and therefore a lack of success. There might be some success there. Obviously, they've all sat down and agreed something. You could talk about the success of the agreement they've made about Sudetenland. Provenance. It's a British perspective, and David Lowe's famous for being a skeptic, so he's obviously going to take the negative view of it. And he's quite reliable in his understanding of international politics. He seems to get most things right. So you can talk about, obviously, the date is the third Munich conference. It's at the end of the deal, therefore it's factually correct because it's already happened. You can talk about those sorts of things. if you want to, at the end, I've given that writing frame. If you want to really give a very clear judgment and you want to evaluate a little bit more, you could add in a however not totally useful because, and talk about a sort of lack of utility, if you like, somewhere. Again, put yourself a time limit, 6 or 7 minutes maybe for this one to do, and we'll show an example shortly. All right, give it a go. Right, so here is an example answer. So source B is very useful about the success of appeasement as it hints towards its failures. So I've given a reason. I think it's a failure, appeasement. For example, it's published after the Munich Agreement by Lowe, a very experienced political cartoonist. This is useful because he knows by this stage that the appeasers have given in to the aggression of Hitler and rewarded him with his state and land. This, he knows, is a failure as it made Hitler and Mussolini more powerful. So, given the date, I've talked about the date is easy to talk about. I know the facts that are around about that date. I can talk about how the date is useful. And it's given me context for the entire sort of event. And I've managed to show off my knowledge of the event. Furthermore, the content. Notice how I'm signposting again? I've done the provenance and now I'm doing the content. I'm signposting what I'm doing to the examiner. They can flick through very quickly and give me marks. So the content supports this failure as it shows that Stalin was not invited to the meeting. This shows appeasement failed. Again, linking to my statement at the start, I said it failed. That's my argument. As Stalin's Russia is a key power in the East, Stalin now loses faith with the Western powers and does not sign future anti-Hitler alliances with them. This is because he believes appeasement is an anti-communist policy aimed at pushing Hitler into war with Stalinist Russia. So I've explained the consequence idea. So in my quiz notes, I've got positive and negatives of appeasement. So I've picked out a couple of the big negatives there to explain appeasement. And you'll notice in my revision video also positive and negatives there. So use those resources to help you revise, and you can be successful with this answer. So look around for sources. You can actually just literally put in topics like appeasement and then cartoons on internet search engines. Go to the images section. You can find cartoons. You can practice working through them. So keep working on your source cartoons. Here we are. Then we're going to do a big 16 marker. We're going to look at the NaziSoviet Pact was the most important cause of the Second World War. How far do you agree with this view? We've got 4 marks for SPAG. So how are we going to be successful with this answer then? So 16 markers. So it actually requires you to do 3 topics now. We need to do NaziSoviet Pact and 2 others. So as I was just saying about NaziSoviet Pact and 2 others, do not do a yes/no of the topic. Don't do NaziSoviet Pact yes, NaziSoviet Pact no. We need to be more advanced than that at this level. We need to be NaziSoviet Pact, maybe yes and no in the same paragraph, then 2 other themes, appeasement, Treaty of Versailles, Hitler. We need to do other topics. What else do we need to do? Each obviously needs a P or appeal paragraph, and then we need a short conclusion at the end. Again, thinking about time, we need to be able to do this in about 20 minutes or so. So we need to be fairly timely with this. SPAG. Now, there's 4 marks here, and this could be the deal breaker between a grade. So this is worth concentrating on. So you've got to have good spelling, punctuation, grammar. Remember your capital letters. You need to think about Germany having a capital G, Hitler having a capital H, all those things. Also, the marks given for keywords and complex connectives. So you need to have connectives like furthermore, on the other hand, those sort of argumentative connectives, and lots of keywords. Obviously, you're going to have Rhineland or Anschluss or appeasement, state and land. You're going to have that keyword knowledge, and they're looking for that for top marks. So the 3 and 4 marks is not just the perfect punctuation and grammar, it's also the knowledge of keywords and connectives. So what can we do for this? So let's come up with a bit of a plan, shall we? Again, you can obviously look back at my my video and find out more and sort of recap your knowledge. I'll look back to my quiz notes and find lots of details there also. But the NaziSoviet Pact, this little table here is a little plan. So the NaziSoviet Pact, it meant Hitler could invade Poland as there were no 2-front war. So it's going to be that final cause of the war, because Hitler, by making a deal with Russia, can invade Poland without fighting Russia on one side and France and Britain on the other side. The pact, as evidence, the pact was made between Russia and Germany, August 1939, to divide up Poland and create the invasion. So obviously this caused war, because now Hitler could ignore the French and British ultimatum on invading Poland, and he could fight just in the West against France and Britain and not against Russia. So he's made his war easier. It's more manageable. He can go to war. So that's quite a very short-term sort of spark sort of cause. There's got to be other causes that are possibly more important than that. So let's go back in time a little bit. Here are some of the other causes. So we got appeasement. Appeasement meant Hitler gained power and confidence. He grew in stature. So Hitler was allowed to stay to land and he gained more power and he could take Czechoslovakia then. And this all helped him rearm and make a bigger army. If we take the theme of rearmament, we can go back in time a little bit more than the Munich crisis. We can go back to appeasement in 1935 when Hitler was allowed to rearm by the British. The British ignored the freedom to rearm rally and they said made a deal, the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, to try and control his rearmament, where the German Navy was allowed to rearm to 30% of the British Navy. So that is basically saying that the Treaty of Versailles doesn't have to be followed and Britain's allowing Hitler to break the Treaty of Versailles. So that appeasement allows rearmament, and then the Munich conference appeasement allows Hitler to take land, become more confident, and believe the Allies are weak, so he'll ignore the ultimatum over Poland. We've also potentially got Hitler's aggressive foreign policy we could talk about. Now, I think you probably need to make a choice between appeasement or Hitler's aggressive foreign policy. I think they're fairly similar. You wouldn't do both of those. So aggressive foreign policy, you could talk about he claiming land like Anschluss, like obviously Sudetenland, and then obviously invading Czechoslovakia in March 1939. And all of these together then led Hitler to show France and Britain that he couldn't be trusted. He was breaking the deal by invading particularly Czechoslovakia in March 1939, and they set an ultimatum for war. Then finally, you've got Treaty of Versailles, and this is a really good one to talk about, go back in time a lot more. It is, after all, maybe the cause of Hitler coming to power. It is obviously the cause of them going to war to take land, because the Treaty of Versailles took it away. So the Treaty of Versailles weakened Germany too much and punished them too much as a cause of war. For example, they lost land, 6 million Germans, military restrictions, 100,000 soldiers, and obviously the big reparations fine of 6.6 billion. This meant Germany adopted an aggressive foreign policy to regain their power and land. So Hitler rebuilt his army in secret for 1933, announced obviously conscription in 1935 and a big army. And obviously this started to cause international tension towards war, like the Strasser Front. And you could then go, you could say furthermore, the reparations actually led to the rise of Hitler to power. They made the Great Depression even worse, with so many people unemployed voting for Hitler to solve the problems of Germany. So you've got potentially quite a lot to explain there. Other topics you could bear in mind: failure of the League of Nations, you want to do that one? Or the Great Depression, if you want to do that one. I think that's probably a little bit too German focused for this topic though. You want to stick to the international ones rather than maybe the sort of German depth study type topics. But you can see there the sort of PE style idea developing. So let's start to see how it might turn into a paragraph. So what does a grade 9 paragraph look like? Well, again, we're doing this process where I'll start the paragraph and you can have a think about how you might finish it, or you can, lo and behold, you get a pen and paper and start writing something, being that that's the main tool for the exam. Perhaps that might be a good idea, folks. So you could write a paragraph as we go along, if you like. So have a pause. How would you start off your NaziSoviet Pact paragraph? How much are they to blame and why? What's your argument? Have a think. I've gone for this. So firstly, the NaziSoviet Pact was partly to blame as an important cause of the Second World War because it gave Hitler the confidence to attack Poland as he would not have a two-front war. So I'm going to support that with some evidence. Again, you can pause, put down an example, describe the NaziSoviet Pact a bit. Go to maybe quit my quiz at next if you need some extra facts. What would you put as an example? So here is my example. For example, the pact between Russia and Germany signed in August 1939 to divide up Poland also agreed that they would not go to war over Poland. So quite simple. Russia and Germany pact not to go to war over Poland. Easy. This meant the NaziSoviet Pact caused war because, right, again, have a pause, have a think, folks. I've gone for because Hitler could ignore the French-British ultimatum of war if he invaded Poland, as he would only have to fight on the West in a single front war, and obviously didn't have to be fearful like they were in the First World War of that two-front war problem. Furthermore, he knew the Allies were quite weak. He was confident in victory. You could talk about how they hadn't rearmed much. They'd been trying to make deals. They seemed quite weak. Then finally, you could do a however. This isn't our most important cause. We think it's partly. So we maybe want a weakness about it. So you could think of a weakness now, if you like. And I've gone for, however, the Nazi-Soviet Pact is only a short-term end cause of the story of events. And the longer-term ideas are more important in causing the rise of Hitler and causing his foreign policy. Right, so I hope you've been finding that useful. You can go away, of course, now and try your own paragraphs. You can go back through the presentation to the table and try your own paragraphs. Maybe it's great. Maybe it's Treaty of Versailles. Maybe it's Hitler's foreign policy. Maybe it's appeasement. Maybe it's League of Nations. Give this a go. Practice paragraphs, writing them in 5 minutes. Trying to get this whole essay done in 20 minutes. Bit of thinking time. 3 paragraphs each of 5 minutes. Little conclusion, 2 minutes. A 20-minute essay. Good luck with that, folks. So I hope you found today's session really useful. We've also done loads of exam skills, looking at sources, the big explanation skills of writing an account. Oh my God, we don't like the write account question, do we? So have lots of practice. You can, of course, make up your own questions. Write an account on appeasement. Write an account of how appeasement caused international problems. Write an account of how Hitler destroyed the Treaty of Versailles. Write an account of how the NaziSoviet Pact led to war. Okay. Very simple, just make up questions. You don't need to be writing around the internet or looking through exam papers too much, just make up questions. As I said, hunt down sources online, like the images areas of internet sites. You can find cartoons for pretty much any area and just think about how is this useful on this event. Right, good luck with all your preparations, folks, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.